The moment that sparked a dream. It was January 20th, 2025, a date forever etched into the hearts of millions. The nation gathered in awe, watching as Donald Trump took the oath of office to become the 47th President of the United States. A grand spectacle unfolded before the world, one that was filled with the kind of history and tradition that can only be experienced during a presidential inauguration. The flags waved, the cameras flashed, and the crowds roared with excitement. Yet, in the midst of it all, it was a young man who stole the spotlight. Not the newly sworn-in president, but his son, Barron Trump. At just 18 years old, Barron stood tall with a quiet, almost ethereal composure. In a moment filled with grandeur, it was his calm demeanor that caught everyone's attention. His presence radiated an unspoken strength, and as he stood beside his father, there was something strikingly remarkable about him. The world watched in silence as Donald Trump took his oath, but the camera soon shifted to Barron. And there he was, serene, poised, and remarkably at ease for someone so young. Without saying a single word, Barron had already captured the imagination of millions. His gaze exchanged with his father seemed to speak volumes, and as the ceremony continued, whispers started to circulate. Who was this young man? Could he too, one day stand in the very position his father had just assumed? People had already begun speculating, not just about Donald Trump's future, but about his son's. The question that lingered on everyone's lips was simple yet profound. Was this young man, with his quiet intensity, the future of America? It wasn't long before the headlines flooded the media, some of them bold and speculative. Barron Trump, the next president. Social media exploded with curiosity, admiration, and awe. Despite the world's overwhelming focus on Donald Trump and his monumental achievement, it was Barron who seemed to command the greatest attention, almost as if the world could sense something extraordinary in his presence. The story was just beginning, and little did anyone know that the journey of this quiet young man would become a narrative that would captivate the world for years to come. But what was it about Barron that so deeply resonated with people? What made him stand apart from so many other young individuals, particularly those raised in the spotlight? Was it just the weight of his family name, or was there something more profound that defined him? As the inauguration day unfolded, people quickly realized that Barron Trump was no ordinary young man. It wasn't just his reserved nature that captured attention. It was his intellect, his talents, and the depth of his character that made him stand out. Barron's brilliance was undeniable. By the age of 12, he had mastered 4 languages: Slovenian, French, Italian, and German. He could effortlessly switch between them in public settings, leaving audiences in awe of his linguistic abilities. But languages were only the beginning of his intellectual prowess. Barron's true talent lay in his love for chess. At the age of 14, he stunned the world when he defeated a renowned grandmaster in a match that left observers speechless. His ability to think several moves ahead, his strategic thinking, and his patience set him apart from even the most seasoned players. The world hailed him as a modern-day prodigy, a boy whose intellect seemed far beyond his years. Yet for Barron, it was never about fame or recognition. It was about the challenge, the strategy, and the art of outthinking his opponent. Even as the world marveled at Barron's brilliance, he remained humble. He never sought the limelight, preferring instead to focus on honing his skills, always striving to improve. As he stood beside his father on that fateful day in January, his quiet confidence shone through. He didn't need to speak to be heard. His presence alone was enough to command respect. What made Barron even more extraordinary, however, was his humility and compassion. Unlike the brash persona often associated with his father, Barron's kindness was evident in everything he did. One story that stood out during the inauguration was when he noticed a young girl in the crowd who had dropped her flag and was crying. Without hesitation, Barron descended from the platform, gently picking up the flag and handing it to her. He knelt beside her, offering a few kind words of comfort, and the moment was captured on camera. The internet exploded in praise, with one commentator noting, "Barron Trump has the heart of a true leader." This was a moment that would be remembered for years to come, a glimpse into the kind of man, and possibly the kind of president, Barron Trump might one day become. It was a small act of kindness, but it left a profound impact on everyone who witnessed it. Barron's compassion was not a one-time occurrence, but a defining trait that would shape his future. Later that evening, as the festivities continued, a moment of unexpected vulnerability captured the world's attention once more. As the national anthem played, an elderly war veteran near the front of the crowd struggled to rise to his feet. Barron, with no thought for protocol, moved swiftly to his side, helping the man to stand and supporting him until the anthem concluded. The crowd fell silent in awe, moved by his simple act of kindness and grace. It was moments like these that made people believe in his potential to lead, not just with intelligence or power, but with empathy and humility. Barron had already shown the world that he was no ordinary teenager. He wasn't just the son of a former president. He was a young man with a heart full of promise, ready to serve and make a difference. The questions about his future, about his potential to become the leader of the free world, began to intensify. Could Barron Trump truly follow in his father's footsteps, or would he carve out his own path, one defined by his own values and vision for the future? The inauguration had marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Trump family, but for Barron, it was just the beginning of his own extraordinary journey. As the days and weeks passed, stories of his intelligence, kindness, and leadership began to spread like wildfire. Interviews with teachers, mentors, and even childhood friends painted a picture of a boy who had always been extraordinary. Barron had never sought the spotlight, but he had quietly shaped himself into someone capable of inspiring millions. And so, the world watched in anticipation, wondering what the future held for Barron Trump. Would he one day rise to the highest office in the land? Or would he choose to follow a different path? No one could say for sure, but one thing was certain. The journey ahead would be one of inspiration, compassion, and quiet strength. In the heart of Washington, under the grand dome of the White House, Barron Trump had already begun to fulfill his own destiny. The world had already started to believe in him, and in that moment, Barron realized something profound. It wasn't about being the next president. It was about making a difference in the lives of others, no matter how big or small the act might be. As the stars shone brightly above, Barron stood tall, quiet, thoughtful, and ready for whatever the future held. The quiet power of a leader's heart. As the months passed since that fateful inauguration day, the world's curiosity about Barron Trump only deepened. There was something about him, a quiet strength, an unspoken promise, that kept drawing attention. But what most people didn't know was that Barron's journey was never about chasing the spotlight. In fact, he avoided it at every turn, preferring instead to remain in the background. Yet, as his family navigated their new reality in the White House, Barron couldn't escape the growing recognition of his potential. In the days following the inauguration, Barron settled into his new life with remarkable ease. It would have been easy for him to be swept up in the whirlwind of politics, fame, and expectations. Yet Barron remained grounded, focusing on the lessons that had shaped him long before the world had taken notice of his every move. He had been taught early on by his mother, Melania Trump, that leadership was not about titles or power. It was about service. This lesson was something that would guide him throughout his life, whether or not he ever stepped into the role of president. Barron's passion for learning was boundless. While his peers focused on the latest trends or celebrity gossip, Barron's mind was constantly at work, refining his intellect and developing his talents. He spent countless hours studying, reading, and, of course, playing chess. For Barron, the game was more than a pastime. It was a metaphor for life itself. The careful planning, the long-term strategies, and the quiet determination to stay ahead of his opponents mirrored the way he approached every challenge in life. One afternoon, Barron sat quietly in the White House library, his mind absorbed in a game of chess against an online opponent. His focus was unmatched, every move calculated with precision. The clock ticked on, but Barron seemed oblivious to the passing time. He was in his element, lost in the complexity of the game. As he moved his queen into position, his thoughts wandered to the bigger picture, his family's legacy, his own aspirations, and the role he might someday play in the world. It wasn't the first time Barron had thought about the future. For years, he had quietly wondered whether he was destined to follow in his father's footsteps and lead the nation. But more than that, Barron often found himself thinking about the kind of leader he wanted to be, one defined not by power or fame, but by compassion, wisdom, and integrity. The world had already started to recognize Barron's potential. Everywhere he went, people were drawn to his calm, unassuming presence. But there was something more that set him apart: his deep sense of empathy. Barron was no stranger to the difficulties that others faced, and his heart was always open to those in need. He spent countless hours volunteering, whether it was visiting hospitals, helping at local shelters, or simply offering a kind word to someone going through a tough time. One story that quickly spread through the media captured the essence of Barron's compassion. During a visit to a children's hospital in Washington, Barron had spent hours with young patients, talking to them about their favorite hobbies, offering words of encouragement, and just being present with them. His demeanor was quiet, but his connection to the children was undeniable. He didn't need to say much. His genuine care for them was all that mattered. And for many, it was in these quiet moments of kindness that Barron's true leadership qualities shone through. As the world continued to watch, Barron's relationship with his family remained a cornerstone of his character. He was incredibly close to his mother, Melania, who had always been a source of wisdom and strength. The lessons she had instilled in him about humility, discipline, and the value of kindness were deeply ingrained in Barron's heart. But it was also his father, Donald Trump, who had shaped him in ways that few could fully understand. Despite the public's often sharp judgment of his father's persona, Barron had come to appreciate the resilience and determination that Donald embodied. Their relationship was unique, father and son, but also two individuals who understood each other in a way few could. Donald had often spoken of Barron's quiet brilliance, his ability to remain composed in even the most chaotic of situations. It was a quality that Donald admired deeply, for it reminded him of his own path. A journey marked by challenges, perseverance, and an unyielding drive to succeed. While Barron was still young, Donald knew that his son had the potential to carve out a legacy of his own, separate from his own. One evening, as they sat in the Oval Office together, Donald looked across the desk at Barron, who was engrossed in a book on political strategy. "You're going to change the world one day, son," Donald said, his voice filled with pride. Barron looked up from the book, meeting his father's gaze. "I don't want to just change the world, Dad," he replied thoughtfully. "I want to make it better." It was a moment of quiet reflection, one that revealed just how deeply Barron understood the weight of leadership. He didn't want power for the sake of power. He didn't crave the title of president, simply because it was within his reach. For Barron, leadership was about service to others, about making decisions that would have a positive impact on the lives of those who needed it most. As the year went on, Barron's public appearances became more frequent. He was often seen accompanying his parents to important events, quietly observing the world around him. Despite the heavy expectations placed on him, Barron never wavered from his commitment to stay true to himself. He never sought attention, and he certainly didn't chase headlines. But inevitably, the world continued to take notice of his actions. At one such event, Barron was invited to a gathering to honor the contributions of young people who had made a significant impact on their communities. The event was filled with notable figures, philanthropists, and influencers from across the nation. While most of the guests mingled and exchanged pleasantries, Barron remained on the periphery, watching the interactions unfold. As the evening went on, Barron found himself in conversation with a young woman who had started a foundation to support education in underserved communities. She spoke passionately about her work, and Barron listened intently, offering thoughtful questions and insights of his own. What struck her most, however, was Barron's humility. Despite his family's immense wealth and influence, Barron never once mentioned his own background. Instead, he focused on the stories of others, the challenges they had faced, and the successes they had achieved. It was this humility that struck a chord with those around him. Barron was not defined by his last name or his upbringing. He was defined by his actions and his heart. And in that moment, those who had the privilege of speaking with him knew that he was destined for something greater, not because of his family, but because of who he was as a person. Later that evening, as the event came to a close, Barron's mother, Melania, found him standing outside, looking up at the stars. She joined him, her presence offering a sense of calm. Barron turned to her and asked, "Do you think people will ever see me for who I really am?" Melania smiled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "They already do, Barron. They see the real you, the one who listens, who cares, and who wants to make a difference. You don't need to prove anything to anyone." Her words lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long while, Barron felt a sense of peace. He didn't need to live up to anyone's expectations. He didn't need to follow in anyone's footsteps. He was already on his own path, one that was uniquely his own. The following day, as Barron sat at his chessboard once again, the pieces glimmering under the soft light of his study, he realized that the game wasn't just a pastime. It was a reflection of his life, a life filled with strategy, patience, and the understanding that every move mattered. Every decision had consequences, and the choices he made would shape the future. Barron knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but he also knew that he was ready. He had the heart, the intellect, and the compassion to be the leader the world needed. Whether or not he ever ascended to the highest office in the land was irrelevant. What mattered was the impact he would have on the lives of those around him, the people he would serve, uplift, and inspire. And so, as Barron Trump sat at his chessboard, contemplating the moves ahead, he made a promise to himself. No matter where his journey took him, he would always lead with integrity, compassion, and a deep commitment to serving others. The world was watching, yes, but more importantly, Barron was watching himself, shaping his future one quiet, deliberate move at a time. The weight of legacy and the spark of individuality. The passage of time only amplified the weight of expectation surrounding Barron Trump. As his life continued to unfold under the public microscope, it became clearer that he was not just a figurehead in the shadow of his family name. He was a person of substance, a young man with a unique vision, and a quiet yet compelling drive to define his own legacy. The world watched him closely, fascinated by his intelligence, his sense of compassion, and the extraordinary composure he exhibited at every public appearance. Yet, amidst all the admiration and speculation about his future, Barron often found himself in quiet moments of reflection, wondering what path he should take. How could he possibly live up to the legacy of his father, Donald Trump, without becoming a mere reflection of his father's persona? Could he remain true to who he was while stepping out from under the towering expectations that seemed to follow him everywhere? Barron spent hours in the solitude of his study, contemplating the future. He often turned to his chessboard, where every piece represented a different choice, a different potential outcome. Each move required careful thought, patience, and foresight, and so did his life. Just as in the game of chess, Barron knew that every decision he made would have consequences. But more than that, he also understood that his actions, no matter how small, would affect the lives of others. That responsibility weighed on him heavily, but it also fueled his determination to become a leader who could inspire and uplift those around him. His quiet nature, often mistaken for passivity, was actually a strength. He had learned to observe, to listen, and to understand the intricacies of the world without rushing to judgment. The young man who had once captured the attention of the world at the inauguration, standing composed and calm, had grown into someone capable of seeing beyond the present moment and contemplating the future with a sense of purpose and responsibility. The summer following the inauguration brought with it a string of public appearances and charity events, each one seemingly reinforcing the idea that Barron Trump was destined for greatness. But Barron was not driven by the desire to be seen. He remained deeply rooted in his values, choosing to focus on the causes that mattered most to him: education, compassion, and mental health advocacy. Despite the growing interest in his personal life and the constant buzz about his potential as a future president, Barron remained steadfast in his commitment to learning and helping others. One such event took place in a small town in Michigan, where Barron attended a fundraising gala for a charity dedicated to providing resources for underserved schools. The gala was attended by politicians, philanthropists, and influential figures from across the country, but Barron's presence was felt long before he even entered the room. As he walked through the doors, the crowd fell silent, not because of his last name, but because of the energy he brought with him. He had a quiet confidence that was magnetic, a grounded presence that seemed to calm the room. Throughout the evening, Barron spoke with educators, students, and community leaders about the challenges they faced in their schools and how they could work together to make a difference. His words were thoughtful, measured, and above all, compassionate. It was clear that Barron wasn't just concerned with the grand gestures of charity. He was concerned with the people, the individuals whose lives could be changed by meaningful support. As the event concluded, Barron lingered behind, taking time to speak to a young girl who had shared her story about the struggles she faced in her school. The girl had written a letter to Barron, expressing her hopes for a better education system. When Barron read the letter, it left a lasting impression on him. The girl, only 12 years old, had written about how her school lacked the resources to help children with special learning needs. Barron was deeply moved by her words and promised to take action. In the days that followed, Barron worked with his team to organize a series of meetings with education officials to explore how best to support schools in need of resources. He didn't do it for publicity or accolades. He did it because he believed that every child, regardless of their background, deserved a chance to succeed. His initiative didn't make headlines. It didn't draw crowds or create viral moments. But the impact it had on the students and teachers it touched was immeasurable. Barron's focus on education was just one of many areas where he had already begun to forge his own path. But there was another cause that had become particularly close to his heart: mental health. Having witnessed the pressures that came with public life, both for his family and for others, Barron felt a deep empathy for those who struggled with mental health challenges, especially young people. He often spoke about how society needed to change its approach to mental health, making it more accessible and less stigmatized. He spent time with mental health professionals, learning about the complexities of the issue, and became a vocal advocate for policy changes that would improve mental health services for young people. This work didn't come with the glamorous headlines or TV interviews that might be expected of someone with his status. Instead, it was the quiet conversations, the hours spent listening to those who had been affected by mental health issues, that shaped his understanding of the cause. One day, while attending a mental health awareness event in Washington, Barron met a young man who had battled depression for years. The young man spoke about his struggles, and Barron listened intently, offering words of encouragement and support. It was a simple exchange, but it had a profound impact on the young man, who later spoke publicly about the conversation they had. "Barron Trump didn't see me as a patient or a statistic," he said. "He saw me as a person." These moments, often unnoticed by the public, spoke volumes about the kind of leader Barron was becoming. His focus was never on fame or recognition. It was on making a real, tangible difference in the lives of those who needed it most. As the year drew to a close, Barron found himself grappling with the tension between his personal desires and the public's expectations of him. There were days when the pressure felt overwhelming, and he wondered whether he could live up to the legacy of his father while also staying true to himself. The weight of his last name was undeniable, but it was the expectations placed on him that often felt suffocating. One evening, while walking alone in the gardens of the White House, Barron reflected on the path that had brought him here. He thought about the years of training, the lessons learned from his parents, the moments of quiet growth, and the causes that had come to define him. And for the first time in a long while, he found peace in the realization that he didn't need to follow anyone's path but his own. In that moment, Barron made a quiet vow to himself. No matter where life took him, no matter what role he might one day take on, he would always stay true to the values that had guided him so far: compassion, intellect, humility, and service to others. The world might expect him to become the next president, but Barron knew that his future was about far more than fulfilling anyone's expectations. It was about making his own mark, creating a legacy defined not by his last name but by his actions. The following morning, as he walked down the hallways of the White House, Barron felt a sense of clarity. His path wasn't set in stone. He didn't have to live up to anyone else's idea of greatness. The journey ahead was his to shape, one quiet, thoughtful decision at a time. And as the world continued to watch, Barron Trump, still young, still learning, was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead with grace, wisdom, and a heart full of purpose. The journey continues. As the years unfolded, Barron Trump continued to grow, both as a person and as a figure in the public eye. The expectations never ceased, but neither did his commitment to living a life rooted in integrity, humility, and compassion. Through every challenge, every moment of doubt, Barron reminded himself of the most important lesson he had ever learned. Leadership is not about titles, power, or legacy. It's about how you choose to serve others and how you use your voice to inspire, uplift, and guide the world around you. There were moments of public acclaim, no doubt, but Barron never let them define him. His actions, not his name, spoke louder than any headline could. He had learned that greatness wasn't something to be chased. It was something to be earned through consistent, quiet acts of kindness, thoughtful decisions, and a relentless desire to make a meaningful impact. And as his years as a young adult began to shape his understanding of the world even further, Barron found himself taking on new projects that mattered most to him. He continued his work advocating for mental health, partnering with organizations that supported at-risk youth, and using his platform to elevate causes that had once felt distant but were now at the core of his heart. Each decision, each project, no matter how small, was a testament to his belief that real change happens one person at a time. But it was a quiet conversation with his mother, Melania, that marked a turning point in his understanding of leadership. It was a crisp autumn evening, and Barron sat with her on the balcony of their home, overlooking the lights of Washington, D.C. Melania, as always, offered wisdom with a gentle smile. "You've done more for others than most people will ever see, Barron," she said softly. "But remember, leadership isn't about making the loudest noise or gaining the most attention. It's about listening. It's about understanding where people are coming from and meeting them there. It's not about being perfect. It's about making the right decision in the moment with the best of intentions." Barron listened closely, absorbing every word. The advice felt familiar, yet it carried an entirely new weight now that he had walked his own path for so many years. Leadership, he realized, was an ongoing journey, not a destination. And that journey wasn't about pleasing others or fulfilling anyone's dreams for him. It was about understanding his own purpose and aligning it with the needs of the world around him. Years later, when people looked back on Barron Trump's life, it would not be defined by the headlines, the expectations, or the legacy of his family. Instead, they would remember him for the leader he had become, a leader who chose to forge his own way, whose heart was as big as his intellect, and whose determination to serve others would leave a lasting mark on the world. His story was a reminder to us all. True greatness is not built on what we inherit, but on what we give back. And so, as Barron continued his journey, whether in the public eye or behind the scenes, he never lost sight of the values that had shaped him from the start. The path ahead was uncertain, but that was part of its beauty. The only thing that was certain was that, With every step he took, he would strive to be the kind of leader who inspired others to do the same. A quiet legacy, perhaps, but a powerful one. And in the end, that's what truly matters. The lesson Barron Trump's story offers us is simple yet profound. We all have the power to define our own paths, regardless of where we come from or who we're expected to be. Leadership is not about titles or recognition. It's about serving others, staying true to our values, and making a positive difference in the world. Each day is an opportunity to live with intention and kindness, to think ahead and act with purpose. And in doing so, we carve out a legacy that will last far beyond any moment of fame or fortune. Barron's story is a testament to the quiet strength of choosing to be a leader in our own lives, no matter the stage we find ourselves on. Every choice, every moment of empathy, every act of service, that's where true greatness lies. The journey is never easy, but it is always worth it. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.